But
So yeah, we were discussing about the, I guess you said 3,000 years ago migration.
yeah,
Like I
Right.
used to about like
let's
5. Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, let's add background context. Okay, so um, I forgot your name. I started with an M, right?
Micah.
Oh, yeah. So Micah here, he was talking. So he believes that the Hebrews were black people, right? And so
Right.
before we were talking about like the old populations there, and he said that he actually found genetic links and links to people. You said West African people specifically, or which peoples?
Well, they're all. I mean, they're dispersed. It's dispersed all throughout Africa. Actually, it's not
Okay.
just West African. That's where they're most highly concentrated, from my research. But I would say that it's definitely all over Africa.
Okay, yeah. Cause I kind of like I also added like although I haven't seen like anything supporting like West African or even all of Africa, I did talk about how I actually read a little bit about the Natufians, how from the people I've learned from, the
Yeah, me
Natufians
and
could be
you.
viewed as an extension of African people. And then that's when we started talking about the 3,000 year migration that happened. And if I'm not mistaken, you said 25% of all Africans got the influence. Actually,
Yeah. According to this BBC article, let me send it in the chat real quick so that y'all can see it.
okay. According to my research and what I've seen, it wasn't 25% of all Africans. It was specifically um East or Horner Africans. The rest
Yeah,
of
me. If
Africa
you
had a 5%. But yeah, what are you gonna say?
exactly. Yeah, I just want to yeah, to just add to your point. Yeah, me, I 100% believe if it's like if it's talking about like the Horn, and the North about West African and South, it can probably be a little debatable since there's Europeans there. So there's like a little bit what mixing. So, but like the West, I'm not sure about that. Uh, but
I
go
would
ahead.
I would say okay. I would say that how it happened from my point of view, if you because I just sent it in there so y'all can follow along. It says that researchers extracted DNA from a 4,500-year-old skull that was discovered in the highlands of Ethiopia, which is East Africa. A comparison with genetic material from today's Africans reveals how our ancient ancestors mixed and moved around the continents. The findings published in the journal Science suggest that 3,000 years ago, there was a huge wave of migration from Eurasia into Africa. This has left a genetic legacy, and the scientists believe that up to 25% of the DNA of modern Africans can be traced back to this event. And then they had a quote saying that every single population for which we have data in Africa has a sizable component of Eurasian ancestry, said Andrea Minica from the University of Cambridge. That's why I said it was all over, just because it was saying that every single population had, a lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
to Ethiopia. I mean, I love how it quotes. I mean, it referenced Ethiopia, which is like highly believable since Ethiopians, especially if I mean, I don't know what type of skull that they probably or I mean what like I don't know what like maybe the skull belonged to a certain tribe or something like that. But yeah, like Ethiopians do have a high Eurasian admixture, right? Especially like Amhara, like I've seen them, because like we know all like especially in terms of like Kushites they have significant amount of like Eurasian, right? But like
Right.
the I guess whenever scientists are trying to like determine if you have some Kushites or not, is that they always try to compare it with it. I think Somali samples, since Somali samples are like, I mean, since Somalis are the purest, right? So they try to like compared to everybody else, right? And usually like Ethiopians, Amhara, like they have a higher, Eurasian components. Like because I've seen one on like on Jet Match, for example, just one Amhara, like he had like 65% Kushite, right, and about another extra like 25% what
Right.
Yemeni, right? I think it's probably because I mean they speak a Semitic languages, although they're
Right.
Cushitic, so it always has to like we can deduce that sometimes like especially when a population that speaks a language that is kind of contradictory to like its origins, it sometimes like it does kind of tell like they kind of mixed, but obviously not to like so it's not a, like I'm not saying it's like I'm saying like it's a dictator of that, but it's somewhat something,
Right. Yeah, but yeah, that's that. So me bringing that up though was kind of to paint the picture of to show how the 10 lost tribes and all the tribes, in general, could have been African. My next, another point of evidence that would be there's this place called Lachish in Israel, which was the site of a battle, and they ended up taking the skulls of these, obviously Jewish people, right? And they looked at their skulls and they found out that their skulls were doliocephalic or doliochocephalic. I don't know how to really pronounce it perfectly, but and a doliocephalic skull is the premier Negro type of skull. It's a longer head, longer skull, and that is really only prevalent in Black people. And I found like documentation like on multiple different Jews who do have this doliocephalic skull. So and I also found that the doliocephalic skulls are not present in Ashkenazi Jews, and I have a source to back that up as well. So it's not really a hate against them, but it's just setting the record straight and saying that okay, they're not really operating off of science when you really look at it.
Mm, I see. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
May I ask
I
how
just
old are these bones that they dug up?
I'd have to go and check real like yeah, I'd have to check. But it should be from 700 BCE, so that'd be about 2700 years old from Lachish, yeah.
Okay, I see.
Almost 3000.
Wait, so 27 years old, or you said three? Oh, okay, 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 okay. My fault. Okay, I got it.
2700, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, usually I think these are interesting finds because okay, like especially in the regions of Israel, I've read about or like in the Middle Near East that there's been lots and lots of part migration movements, drastic migration
Right.
movements in recent time periods when you look at prehistory, so like that last thousands and tens of thousands of years and population movement in the areas. Um
Mhm.
so I think, usually it's like there's always like different levels that you have to go to things on because you can look at things from the genetic level and especially when we use the term black, which is where I can agree. How do I say your name, bro?
Right.
Well, I can
Micah.
Micah, right?
Yeah.
What's it called? Oh no, 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 it was bro, my friend Rondon.
are you talking to me?
Yeah, yeah. I'll say your name, bro.
Yeah. Oh, Aussie man, he is.
Ozzy Mini. Yeah. I
Aussie
agree.
man, yeah.
My friend Ozzy Mini, bro. Like it's hard to put races inside of like these boxes, especially on the genetic level, because not
Yeah.
every person we consider black is the same genetically. Not even
And
off
I'm
looks.
saying like, the way Micah is like the way he's talking, he's kind of presupposing that we are all the same. Within just because like I feel like whenever people talk about like Africa, especially if sometimes when they just reference a certain ethnicity, they try to generalize it through the whole of Africa, which is not true. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah,
And
no,
and
I would.
and right now I'm kind of reading
Yeah,
more
keep going,
into
keep
this.
going.
I feel like it just simply supports like the East African because it does like reference a study published in a journal, kind of like the BBC source that you sent me, and it's even also like even like referencing that 60,000 years ago migration that happened, right? I think that's probably just the Natufian, since we like us like Kushites, or I'll say the Afro-Asiatic family members, we like carry a haplogroup that is like 47,000 years ago. I will be reading like this article. I'm trying to like reading and finish it all, and like try to break it down to you guys because it's like it's really like emphasizing on East Africa, you know.
Mm.
That's what I'm saying. Like maybe, like yeah, it's just my bad, emphasizing on East Africa, not like the whole continent like that.
Well, the
But
reason why I said that it was it was the whole, well, not the whole continent, but that like all Africans at least share some of the DNA, is because it said, let me go back and read it again.
Because even here it says that quite remarkably, we see in Ethiopia about 20%. So a fifth of the genome of people living there right now is actually of Eurasian origin. It actually comes from these farmers, explaining Dr. Right? And even here it says that we know that the proper response to core of the people that see correspond
Right.
to the it lived in East Africa, right? Because I know like everybody knows this, right? That in East Africa, right, the original inhabitants were usually of like Christian descent. You understand? I think I'm still like researching more on this because I heard that they like was sequenced like a skull, right, that was found in Kenya, and like the guy I forgot what was it called, but he looked like very Eurasian, like I was saying maybe Levant looking, just a little bit more
Right.
dark, you know. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and now remember the Bantu expansion happened.
Right.
And obviously, the people that the Bantус that live, they have a little bit more like Eurasian admixture, right? I'm like really, that's what I'm saying. Like, sure, South, I think he said something a little bit about South Africa. But it goes further than that, because if you go to the corners of Africa, all the way West Africa or South Africa, even population that we really thought were purely Africans have 5-6% of their genome that dates back to these Western Eurasian farmers, right? That's just only 5-6%. I think this one, like I already know, like for example, like the Fulanis, right? The Fulanis, I think they average about. I think it depends on what region in West Africa, right? Shuran is also like average about like 10, right? Is it 10 to 25% or even 30 of Eurasian, right? Then the rest is probably some ancient West African population that used to live there. So yeah, that is definitely something that is plausible. And here, what I would like to also add is that you see, it kind of supports my view that some Africans, we have this like common myth that is spread, right? Because we think that Africa is the oldest continent, and therefore we're like pure and everybody's mixed somehow, right? But that's obviously wrong, because in order for like all these ethnicities that you see to this day, ancient population, they came together and they mixed, and even those ancient population, they were probably mixed by some ancient until, because I mean we have only been here 300,000 years, 300,000, right, as Homo sapiens. But go ahead, man.
Yeah, no. I was, my fault if I was supposed to not supposed to interrupt, but yeah, man. I definitely do like see that, man. Cause
Yeah, and I mean, he says that about the Neanderthal genes, because that is true. I think I don't know. Maybe you can correct me. But like I know like East Africans, they do have, I think, a little bit more of like Neanderthal ancestry. Like some Somalis be having like 100 variants, 120 variants. While I think some West African, I have to see what they get, but I think they get like way less than that, because I mean we also like we know that everybody obviously has 2% Nathaniels, but variants are a little bit different. But that's all I like to say.
yeah, no, I
Okay.
seen too like with my DNA test, I forgot they told me I had like very little variance, like I variance of Neanderthal ancestry, like 2 out of like 7,000. So I had like
Oh
one of
yeah,
the
I see.
lower, yeah,
Yeah,
but
Yeah, that's
I
more Caucasian
we just
who have.
concentrate on East
Yeah.
Africa. And East Africa usually, like the further you go to, especially the northern, I'm talking about like Somalia, like especially the further you go to the Horn, is more variance, right? But
yeah,
the farther you go away from that, it's less and less and less and less.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I think I think, bro, this is a new source. I could, push my agenda. I'll probably be using this, So I thank you.
yeah, it's all good, bro. Yeah, you know, actually, seeds, especially like I like talking about these Asian populations, right? So hold
Yeah,
on,
because a
bro.
lot of like they try to like deny it, especially because I be feeling sorry for my Kesha, because sometimes it does like some, I guess, West or even African Americans try to bring this up to try to discredit them and say like, oh, you're not the original inhabitant, because you got, or what, you got some, your genetics doesn't, your genetic origin doesn't come from here, or this and that. Oh, you have Eurasian, therefore you're not African. So they don't like to admit to that, right? But this happened
Mm.
like 10,000 years ago. So, and usually people like, I don't like the people whenever they try to like, they try to like I think associate like region to genetics. I mean, sure, it's one of the factors, but sometimes they can kind of contradict, you know.
Exactly.
Like
They try to
like
say
for
like, oh
example,
well,
like Haitians, right? Like Haitians, there's Jamaicans. Should we kick them out of Haiti because the people who
the,
inhabit Haiti
yeah,
were Tainos? Like that's their home. Like why are Haitians there? They come from West Central Africa. You know what I mean? Like it
Mm.
contradicts all the time. You really can't go by that, because
Yeah.
people move around. They don't just stay in one
right.
place.
And
Yeah.
that's why
Facts.
with me when I'm doing my research, and people tell me, well, Micah, what aren't they just don't wasn't the Jews just look how they look today? And I'm like, well, you could use that same logic with America. 400 years ago, this place was populated, or 500, 600 was populated by all Native American looking people. And if you show up today, you would think, if you use that same logic, you would think that, oh, it was always populated by, a diverse culture of mostly white people, though, you know? So that
Mm.
has no logic really to it at all, that type of thinking.
I mean, Native American, like, I mean, especially like what happened to the Native Americans, they do still like keep their, like, they still like, have their, like their genetics isn't really that much influence, I'll say, than South America, South America. Yeah,
Right.
they're just not really that influence as I have to see because I want to like study. That's what I'm saying. I want to study about Native Americans, especially the DNA component. But I mean, yeah, you can. Like, it's not like something to what to disbelieve. You can still maintain that. I'm still the same from what else maybe 1,000 years ago. But yeah, what happened? It was like that was a very fast because I mean they were kind of like almost brought to extinction, and especially like what the Spanish did. You know, uh, you know what happened. I don't want to go too much into that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think the thing, especially with like that confuses people with racial categories, history, and like specifically when it comes to the context of land and who is indigenous to what land. And like you mentioned, the association with like a DNA from with a certain region. I feel like when reading these articles, right, and these studies on ancient populations, if you don't really have the information, you know what I'm saying? Like if you don't really know the prerequisites, you know what I'm saying? You don't have the
You're just
foundation.
talking.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you'll read, but you won't understand what you're reading. You get me? So like for me
Right.
personally, like as I was reading this, bro, like I was asking a lot of questions to other people who knew more than me in the topic, and I sort of like had to get in the habit of sort of thinking about this all of the time just to barely be able to understand it and to be able to have a grasp on it. But I think yeah, like it definitely gets hard because if I just like I even talked about this recently, right, with my DNA test. People were starting to debate about what is Sudanese DNA, what is Sudanese
Exactly.
DNA? Because I mean, to be honest, bro,
Yeah.
like, did you guys ever see that article? Everybody in the world originally, apparently, like, at one point were Sudanese, like lived in Sudan, according to like,
Right.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah, I heard about that. I heard about that. It's a new update. This is
yeah,
interesting. I want to know more about it.
yeah, man. So it's like,
That's
you
where
know,
because that's where the Garden of Eden was around. Yep.
yeah. So
It
people
was
said like, yeah. So like I see these debates, especially, like I see it's going on a lot now. Like who is the original Sudanese? Original Sudanese people. You give me where South Sudanese, the original Sudanese people, where people from North Sudan, the original Sudanese, Western Sudan, Eastern Sudan. The big problem, especially when it comes to the DNA test, is identifying what is a Sudanese indigenous ancestry, because there's so many different
And
diverse
you
people.
Yeah, and you have to understand, most of these, like especially like these countries within Africa, like they're kind of like fabrications.
Mm-hmm.
So most. I mean, look at me, bro. Like I was born. I was yeah, Uganda, right? But my whole family come from Eastern Congo. But like when I take a DNA test, oh, you're 51.9 Ethiopian. And now
What?
am I gonna start like claiming Ethiopia? Like, nah, bro. I'm a Habasha now. No, no, it don't work like that. And I think I even remember. I think there was this one Sudanese girl, right? I would say
Mm.
like she's probably like, I don't know, one of those Nilotic tribes within Ethiopia, right? She was saying like, oh, I hate it whenever people, assume that I'm like South Sudanese. Like, I mean, she looks South Sudanese as hell. But anyways, she's like, oh, 100% Ethiopian. But like that doesn't like. But what does it mean to be Ethiopian? There's over 100 tribes, ethnicities that exist there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And plus, even
Exactly.
that, like, that as a country was, fabricated, and who knows, man? That land probably belonged to no, no. I'll say, I think this, like, some Africans, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes they will even have like more in more in common with the surrounding, right? Like, I mean, with the neighboring country than they will have within the country. You know,
Yeah. No, I get that too. Cause
for
crazy
example,
thing.
for
Oh,
example,
yo, go
this is
on.
just one example. The Tutsis in Banyamulenge, right? They're in
Mm,
Eastern Congo. Like they lived there like 100 way before colonialism, right?
mm,
And but look, the neighboring tribes in there, right, they're like Congolese, like Bantus. I'll say Bantus. I'm not gonna say Congolese, Bantus, but they're not. They're obviously of Horner descent, and they have more in common with Rwanda than they have with Congo. But that land is still theirs. You know what I mean? That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. Like I don't like it when people try to like associate land with genetics. It's gonna contradict all the time, man.
Yeah. Yes, definitely, bro. And yeah, I see that's like always a big problem. You know, moving back towards like prehistory and old populations, bro. Like, okay, like even with the 100% Ethiopian thing, bro. Ethiopia used to refer to all of Africa. Used to refer to Sudan. So again, it's another contradiction to that statement. But also, did you guys? I seen a post. Okay, it was made by a guy called Chematology. Pretty sure Zen or Ozzy Mendez. You know about him. I
Oh,
told you about him.
yeah.
This Guardian. You know about him. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but a guy called Chematology. He made a post, and apparently, Homo sapien bones from 200,000 years ago may have been found in Greece. Now, I feel like that's kind of like it's kind of like a big surprise, because we always assume like before. I think people used to think that Homo sapiens only began like around 100,000 years ago, but now it's going back, and now we know like kind of existed a little bit longer. But like for Africa, for like people, Homo sapiens, a species that originated in Africa, for them to be in Greece around 210,000 years ago, and this is before like I mean, this race didn't really exist, but especially like the
That's
newer races we see, like whites,
this. This is
Asian,
exactly
huh?
this is exactly what I've been trying to tell you, right? And it's
Yeah,
because whenever I try to bring about this with my other like Kushite brethren, whenever they try to deny of the Eurasian admixture, right? It's fun. Even other, right? Even some other Africans, right? We've been here, right, as Homo sapien 300,000 years, right? And you expect us not to move around and come back? Like, come on, bro. Even three down the line, right, before Homo sapien, there was Homo erectus, right? There was a
mm,
freaking tooth. Their tooth was found in Asia, right? So if their tooth, if these guys were migrating to Asia, they were all these other regions. You think us Homo sapiens, we're gonna stay in one spot? Nah, bro, we're gonna be moving around and we're gonna come back. You know?
exactly, exactly. Because people they like to explore, man.